And now we're so excited to hear from Congresswoman Tlaib. Congresswoman, thank you for being with us.
Oh, thank you all so much for having me. Hello, everyone. This is such a cool conversation. Thank you all. As you all probably know, I've been kind of at the forefront in trying to really humanize what the impact of not changing our tax policy. And many of you have heard me talk about my district where I was born and raised. Part of Detroit, the 13th district is part of Detroit, but we also have Western Wayne suburbs as well as downriver communities. These are like what I call steel, towns and automobile industry jobs that go to about 25% of my residents. But I represent the third poorest congressional district in the country and in the nation. So when we all talk about these policies and the need to do something, I hope that I'm helping you all put a human face to what it means to do nothing and to not address this. As you all know, I mean, it hit everywhere that, our president only paid $750 in taxes. And what my residents will tell you is, yeah, we know about him, but how many others have been able to get away with paying so little with so much? With representing such a community that's been very challenged. I mean, we're the front lines of what doing nothing looks like, not only with corporate pollution in our backyard, literally at every edge of my district, but when you have residents come to you during this pandemic and say, what am I going to do? That's where my early childhood education program was with my child. And I'll say to her, it's okay, we'll figure this out. We'll get something going. And she says, but you don't understand. That's where my child eats twice a day. That's how bad it is for many of our neighbors across the country. When you have a mother who gets her children ripped away from her because she can't afford her water bill, because her water was turned off, because again, water has increased 30%, because you have Nestle and other companies coming and privatizing our water and public resources. And instead of helping her pay her water bill, instead of making it affordable and accessible and clean, we rather take away her child and then put it in a for-profit foster care system that again, has been also, corporate greed has seeped into that as well. And so I want you to know during this pandemic, if anything, the broken systems have been exposed even more. And it's not just a tax code, it's all the systems from mass incarceration where people, 70% or so people that are incarcerated right now are waiting pre-trial proceedings, right? These are folks that are not been charged, like they're waiting to actually get access to justice. They can't afford the cash bail bonds. To those that are telling me that I don't know what to do, I'm going to have to lose my job, because really public education school was my childcare. That's where I was able to send my child to so that I can go to work and make sure that I have food for my children. Everything around us, if anything, has shown its ugly face, from our broken healthcare system, broken education system that, was on survivor mode before this pandemic. And now you're hearing them say, we need $350 billion, Rashida, to making sure, because of the lost revenue, to making sure that we're able to have 5 days a week schooling, where some school districts are actually considering taking it down to 3 days if post COVID. So that's the danger of not investing in us and making government about people first and making sure that people pay their fair share. It has been devastating. I have moments where I'm extremely vulnerable, of course, and I'm one of the members of Congress that is not afraid to not only be angry and shout and be passionate about it, but I shed tears with my residents where I see 40% of my Black neighbors losing their lives to COVID, even though they make up less than 15% of the total population in Michigan. So if anything, COVID and the pandemic has really just exposed why we need to do something. We need to make sure that those on the top are paying their fair share, that they're being taxed. And that, creating jobs is important, but it has to be the right jobs, y'all. Like, my folks are getting poverty jobs. I was at a nursing home. They just did a walkout. They hadn't gotten contract in 2 years. The owner of that nursing home called them hood rats and said, I know where you all live. You'll be back. It's Christmas time and you'll be back. That's the kind of dehumanization that is happening to many of our neighbors, that really the economy would not exist but for the working class, the people that are out there. Really, not only, you show the mattress and the money there. I can tell you, if you give people, like my residents, a stimulus payment, a reoccurring payment, if you give them universal basic income, they don't hoard it. They don't hoard it like corporations. They don't give it out shareholders. They spend it and they stimulate the local economy. And it's a win-win for everyone when that happens. And so I thank you all so much for your courage and leadership to speak the truth. And I call it speaking truth to power. This truth is so important because if it's not our climate, it's not our education system, and so many other things that are all interconnected to our livelihood. I can tell you, being part of this movement of saying enough is enough, we have to pay our fair share. And I loved, I can't remember who was speaking, who was saying that, our parents, our grandparents paid their fair share, and then they were doing fine. They were successful, and it's about time that we do. But Sonia Renee Taylor, I know many of you may have not heard of her. She's an amazing poet, and this incredible poet. And she said something, and this was something she had said really early on during this pandemic. And I want to share with you because it really inspires me, that we got to see this moment as an opportunity, this pandemic as an opportunity. And she said, quote, "We will not go back to normal. Normal never was. Our pre-corona existence was not normal, other than that we normalized greed, inequity, exhaustion, depletion, extraction, disconnection, confusion, rage, hoarding, hate, and lack. We should not long to return, my friends. We have been given an opportunity to stitch a new garment, one that fits all of humanity and nature." And I just hope that inspires you all to continue this important work. And again, thank you, Erica, and thank you, Chuck, everyone, for consistently, again, speaking the truth and being so courageous about it, because I know that it has not been easy for you to be telling many of the people you might be working with or being exposed to that y'all need to be taxed and taxed like crazy. So,
Congresswoman, I don't find that difficult at all. I get so sick of these people. I mean, a friend of mine who's never worked a day in her life inherited $1 million, has an income of $1 million a year. So she pays $200,000 in taxes, and she's pissed off about it. She pays a 20% tax rate on this huge amount of income that she's never done a single thing for. And she's irritated that I'm out there trying to get working people, to at least get a little advantage in this. I mean, this is getting to absurdity levels. Can you talk to us a little bit? We have a bunch of questions, so I know I want to get there, but can you just talk about, everybody is freaked out about taxes. Nobody wants to raise taxes on people. We want to raise taxes on people who have $1 million of income or $5 million of net worth. And we really want to raise taxes on people who have 10 million, 20 million, 30 million, 100 million, $1 billion worth of wealth. And so how can we get your colleagues to recognize that Americans are smart enough to figure out that billionaires need to pay higher taxes and working people don't? What can we do to move this in the Congress?
I want you to know there is a disconnect. I think those Republicans, Democrats, Libertarians, all throughout my district, if I said we need to tax the rich, that they need to pay their fair share, they'll be on board with all of you. It is disconnected with what my colleagues in Congress, many of them are millionaires. Over half of my colleagues, y'all, they're millionaires. So when I'm struggling to find out, where do I going to live? And I got to, and by the way, even how much I pay a month just on health insurance, all this, and it's okay. I'm grateful. I'm blessed that at least I have access to that. And that, my actual insurance is also tied to my employment, right? But what I think is we need to get more people with this lived experience. I'm the eldest of 14. My father only went up to 4th grade education, my mother 8th grade education. I believe very much they contribute to society. They raised me, and now I'm in Congress fighting against poverty, fighting against equitable education funding, all of those things that I think are so important to our country and our nation and really globally. And so I say this to you all, is that there are some in Congress that they're going to be directly impacted. Many of them rely on the stock market. They're like, if the stock market's going well, then everybody's doing well. And that's not true. Again, that disconnect is real, Erica, that my colleagues are not close to the pain. They're not close to those broken systems because it's not impacting them, even though many of them represent districts that have been directly impacted by not taxing the rich. So believe this, And this is Grace Lee Boggs in Detroit. Look her up. She's an amazing person. She said that transformative change, the consciousness in the streets, is what transforms our country, what actually results in transformative change. It doesn't happen with who's in the White House and who's in Congress. It's important, of course, but what I mean by that is getting myself and Cori Bush and Jamal Bowman and others that are directly connected to that lived experience and that pain elected in there, so that we move with the sense of urgency and that connection is still there to the people we represent. That's who we need to get elected.
Excellent. So let's go to our questions. Representative Tlaib, can we use tax laws to fix racial inequity?
Look, racism actually has been a for-profit scheme. If you look at racism and basically opening up the curtain of who's really benefited from these broken systems. I mean, I look at mass incarceration, and I look at even the person that owns Detroit Pistons right now. I mean, this man, he makes so much money. A majority of his money is not from basketball, y'all. It's from charging people $25 for cell phone use. I mean, you think about a cell phone use, the food service, everything is connected to the for-profit scheme that's within our mass incarceration. If you look who's being incarcerated is our Black neighbors. It's those folks. So when you think about, how do you fix these tax laws? What I want you to think of it as systems and these processes that are out there of criminalizing the poor, of making sure that, these inequities that are happening, if you think about why they exist, it's for people behind that curtain that are making money. So I hope that we're talking about it in that way, that people are making money off of our oppression. They're making money off of the working poor. These systems that are broken, from the healthcare system, the immigration system, that workforce that all of a sudden people pretend doesn't exist. They don't pay taxes. Yes, they do. They probably pay way more taxes combined with the people at the top, including Jeff Bezos. So it is so critically important that when we talk about it, it's not simplified that way, Erica, in that question, that we talk about it of who is making money off of racism and looking at those systems, because I saw statistics that were like in the millions of people making money off of that form of oppression, which, by the way, it's so painful for many of my Black, again, growing up in one of the most beautiful Blackest cities in the country. My teachers were African-American. They were telling me about how they were kind of cut off and pushed in certain areas of housing, and then people made money off of that. You think about subsidized housing, it is a developer that is making money off of that. So just remember that all of that, there is a for-profit scheme in all of that, including racism in our country.
So let's take a question from Stanley. What will Biden do if he has a Democratic Congress with respect to the tax laws to eliminate inequality?
Look, I think he has a plan out there. I get it. I just cannot afford Trump for another 4 years. My residents cannot afford a Donald J. Trump administration for the next 4 years. The lawlessness, the fact that they won't follow the subpoena. I explain it to my residents in this way. I sit on House Oversight Committee, Erica, and and Stanley, you should know this, House Oversight. I mean, this is where we're finding out, well, why are they changing the deadline for the census? Why are they including these questions? What's going on? And so, like a doctor who wants to go have surgery to make you healthy, you need x-rays. You need to check the pulse. You need to do all those things. As a member of Congress, we need information from the administration, understanding what are some of those, why are they making decisions like this? Or what is actually happening? How many people have responded so far? All of those things. And we're told, no, you can't have that information. So they want us so basically we're paralyzed in making those decisions because we're not being treated as a co-equal branch of government. We cannot have, and we're not going to have that with the Biden administration. I truly believe they will follow subpoenas. I mean, it is pretty unprecedented that we have held in contempt the Attorney General, Kellyanne Conway, the head of the census. I mean, all of these folks have been held in contempt by the United States Congress. I mean, people are going to write books about it. They already started to. But I think Americans and folks don't understand that this is a pretty unprecedented time, that you have a lawless administration. They do not follow the law. They do not follow the Constitution. And that to me is extremely dangerous. We can't even talk about the things we're talking about because we don't have a transparent federal government, executive branch. We have an executive branch that's doing whatever they want. I mean, they're using the Rose Garden as a campaign grounds. I mean, they're really very forthright too about just not following ethical, constitutional laws. I mean, you all know I asked for impeachment of this president, not based on, I didn't wait for him to bribe a foreign government, y'all. He was already had a quid pro quo thing going on. You wanted to lobby him that week, go stay at the Trump hotel, and then come, like, I think it's T-Mobile and Sprint were trying to merge, and they spent like $200,000 at the Trump hotel, and then came and lobbied the federal government to approve their merger. I mean, that was what's going on. And that's why it's important that people understand, in the Constitution, it says you have to divest. Any conflict, you divest, you walk away from those for-profit schemes, because you have to be able to make decisions in the best interest of the American people, not the best interest of the Trump organization, which, by the way, we put language in the budget. Did you guys know this? We put language in the budget saying you cannot contract out with the Trump organization. The Trump administration takes that language out because they want to continue, obviously, to use our taxes, our public money for their benefit.
So let's look at, I'm going to combine two questions. Bush changed the tax brackets from being more progressive to less progressive. What are our thoughts about going back to that system? And then in contrast, if Trump gets in again and maintains control of the Senate, what tax laws, do you think that we would see in the next Republican administration? Maybe I'll kick this to some of our members. Who wants to take that? What are the, do we think the Biden plan has gone far enough? What do we see on the future if President Trump wins and the Republicans take over the Senate? Chuck, you want to take that one?
Well, just on the Biden plan, he's talking about, I'm only going to raise taxes on people with incomes over 400,000. We actually think he should start higher. He should focus, as Erica said, on the top 1/10 of 1%, people with incomes over $1 million, 2 million, and look at wealth and the concentrations of wealth. And Representative Tlaib is absolutely right. Those proposals are widely popular. So for starters, we think the Biden plan should, raise the first several $1 trillion off of the folks who have done particularly well in the last couple decades, that top 1/10 of 1%, the millionaires and the billionaires. Anybody else want to speak to the Trump question?
Morris?
I don't even want to imagine what Trump might do if he is in charge again. I'll defer to the representative.
Chuck, think about it, Chuck. I mean, he knows this is a temporary gig. He's going to go back to the Trump organization, right? He's going to go back to that. So he's going to make sure. I don't think people realize he's already making decisions in the military, having planes. I mean, this is real. This is actually happening. We're not making it up. They're having planes go a certain place to stay at a resort that was in the negative, and now they're making money because they're obviously reverting, very much, to me, I think it's very direct that it was intentional to do it that way so that, again, his places of business are making money. The federal government shouldn't even be contracting out with the Trump organization. That is a direct conflict of interest. Just imagine what we got now. He's already doing it. Can imagine his last term, what he would do. It would just be completely, we have a crooked CEO in the White House. He would continue to be the crooked CEO and make sure that he gets bang for his buck his last 4 years. And he won't care about us. He won't care about people. He obviously doesn't care about our health. He doesn't care about our well-being. Look, we need somebody that leads with compassion. No matter where we stand, we know that Biden would lead with compassion. We just got to make sure that that movement work, the people in the streets that are demanding with this uprising around, pushing back against the 1%, is getting credibility, that they're able to create a larger movement that will finally hit the halls of Congress and in the White House and make those changes.
But Congressman, I do think there's the reality distortion field that funneling hoses of money at the 1% is working, is gone. I mean, we've got Moody Analytics and Goldman Sachs saying a blue wave would be welcome. When we tie the breakdown of the reality distortion field around billionaires or us to actually, a fair tax system and investment in the communities we care about that have been underinvested in, that's a huge winner for the economy. And now Wall Street's following the progressives behind Biden about how to grow the economy. I think we're on the cusp I keep telling this to Erica. She keeps insisting the cusp isn't close enough, of really winning the table on this.
I know there's a lot of gaslighting going on, and I understand all of that. I just, for me and to everyone that's, trying to listen, we just can't afford a Trump administration. I need us to understand the importance of, look, Biden's not a destination, he's a door. And right now, there's not even just a door to the way, it is a complete wall, y'all. Like, it's a wall you can't get through unless you got like some, we need to make sure that we understand and not put so much of this, oh, well, we're just not going to get closer enough. Understand, we got nothing when we got Trump. We're actually going backwards.
Well, and I'll just mention a couple of things. In one of the COVID relief packages, there was a big tax cut called the Grassley giveaway, which was a big tax cut. So even in the middle of pandemic legislation, people are pushing through tax cuts for the wealthiest people. They also have promoted a capital gains tax cut. So the people who sit around on the beach sipping strawberry daiquiris are going to pay even less taxes than the people working for a living. And then the third piece was the payroll taxes, which are your Social Security and Medicare. That is stimulative to the economy because people who pay into it will then have some extra money in their pockets. They can go out and work. But what that happens then is it underfunds Social Security and Medicare. And then, conservatives come in and say, well, we don't have enough money to run these programs. I want to bring one thing up that you said, Congresswoman Tlaib, about, they're extracting money out of our communities, Black and brown communities particularly, but really out of every working people. The working people are carrying the bulk. Our minimum wage hasn't gone up in 725. And John actually has a fabulous story about what he did with his company. So John, tell us about what you did with your company.
Well, I don't think it's that remarkable, but 5 or 6 years ago when I became CEO, it was just so clear what the disconnect was. So I froze executive salaries and moved everybody up to 15. Now we're closing on $17 an hour around the country. And it's not that hard to understand that if capitalism is about team, you want to work with employees, people have to have fair, expansive and affordable benefits. They have to have a livable wage. And we also have even a charitable gift fund from employees for employees so that folks can take care of each other. 60% of the company participates in that. So it's not that difficult to start to tighten up where we are and pay working people fair wages. And it works, by the way. Our productivity's gone up, our turnover's gone down. There are huge direct economic benefits. And by the way, it's a much better culture.
Oh yeah, John built this community. And look, I remember my dad, again, 4th grade education. He worked at a Ford plant. And what he told me is, the fact that he could just provide for his family in this one job, there was no term. He stayed, as long as he could, but people stay at a job for like 20, 30 years. They're committed to the mission. There's no this turnover. You hear the biggest complaint when I go to some of my, they call themselves small businesses, but they have like 500 plus employees. I sometimes am confused. It's not to me, that's not small, but you see, oh, well, we have this problem. We have this, so there's a lot of turnovers. And I tell them it's because they're trying to find better because they can't survive just on this. They got to figure it out. I literally see some of the Amazon planes. I saw the shift change and a distribution center and people are running out. And I'm like, oh, somebody's like, Rashida, I was like, where are you going? I got to go do DoorDash. They're going to their second job. They're trying to, and it's just unbelievable. People don't realize, look, these are human beings that treating them as like in that way, you're going to have all these other issues that you're paying more into stuff that if you just invested more into them, created stability, economic stability for them,
it works.
You're going to have, yeah, it does. It works, John, like this.
We got 5 minutes left, and I know we have a lot more questions, but Morris, go ahead. Then we'll get to a few more questions.
Oh, I was just going to say the point that we're trying to make is that the very greedy people who like gross inequality are actually short-sighted, and that they're wrong, and that they're actually themselves going to be better off if we have a more equitable society. So
and Morris, speaking of that, I'll tip this question to you. I saw somewhere that America is now the same or even more unequal than France before the French Revolution. Isn't it in the interest of the wealthy to level the playing field a bit, Morris?
Well, yeah. I'm old enough to remember South Africa in the 1980s. That did not end well for the rich people.
Let's see. So if we fix the tax code, how can we prop up working class Americans as well? There's a certain level of holding the top accountable, but what about helping those in the middle or at the bottom? Chuck, you want to take that one?
Sure. And one thing I should just say is I grew up in Bloomfield Hills. I went to Cranbrook. I know your district well. And Grace Lee Boggs is one of those people that took my hand and said, here's how it really works. And, you know, if you think about part of what's happened with this tax policy has been a tax shift. You know, we've taken the burdens, the obligations off of the wealthy, off of the big companies, and we shifted it onto small businesses, we've shifted it off of Bloomfield Hills and onto your district. And I think that's where tax policy really does make a difference, because it should be the reverse. A lot of people in your district should be paying lower taxes. And a lot of people in where I grew up in Bloomfield Hills should be paying higher taxes. That's the way it was in the years after World War II. And we need to restore that. And otherwise we're putting the burdens and obligations on the people who can least afford it.
I'll push this one to John. John, in our country of winners in a country of winner take all economics and politics, how do we change the purpose of our economy?
Well, I think you got to change the premise of winner steal all. I mean, we have to start with the notion of Team America, Team Capitalism. What Congressman Tlaib was talking about. A business is it's not a family, but it is a team. And we all have not just opportunities, but obligations to one another. And we gain when we build up those obligations and honor them. And we lose when we sever them, abandon them, and ignore them. And you see that in the result of whether it's businesses that are, AT&T is still a mess, with the shares going up. Yeah, you know the difference between teams that work and teams that don't. And we should take a lot of the lessons that we learned from sports and just apply them to what we know works in business, because we have some essential moral obligation. And as Chuck and Morris pointed out, when you honor those, America wins, but also capitalism wins.
Representative Tlaib, you mentioned that your colleagues are a bunch of millionaires and don't understand how bad this issue is to us regular people. Does that mean we need to get money out of politics before we have any hope of taxing the rich?
Yeah, I mean, I think, look, overturning Citizens United is critically important. There's about 60, I want to say 63, could be wrong, but around the 60s members of Congress that don't take corporate PAC money. They're actually practicing what they're trying to advocate for, which is to overturn Citizens United and push back corporations. I'm like, well, then practice it, push back and don't take the money. That's my whole philosophy. But I think it's about getting people like myself and working class. And, I don't know if you all remember Congressman John Dingell. And, ever since I was a little girl, he was like a congressman. And he used to talk about how Congress was literally that buffer between the boss, he would call it, or he was old school in that way. And that, the pushback against corporate greed, Congress was that. It was that wall that said, nope, you got enough. It's okay. You got to pay your fair share, and making sure that we have, this, supporting society, supporting families, supporting our schools and the systems, infrastructure, everything that is so critically important, clean water, clean air, all of those things. And so, he was a person that fully understood it. And it was about getting, people from the unions or people from, the Black Club. It was those individuals that getting those folks running for office and running. And what's happening, running for office and winning. And what's happening is there seems to be this kind of, again, this disconnect where people like me, I took 7 different people to convince me to run. And if it wasn't for Steve, who's also alumni at Cranbrook, Chuck, if it wasn't for Steve, who's like, oh, you should run for office, I was like, oh my God, I'm not going to sell out. Like, I'm not going to. And he's like, are you calling me a sellout? I was like, no, Steve, you're different. But I was like, I thinking of the institution as if it's just for the wealthy, as if it's for people that are, because all y'all know, like, I'm very, very raw. I'm not your polished politician, I don't look like one. I don't, And there's all these other issues, to people issues with someone like me that this institution wasn't really made up. But I got to tell you, John Dingell's right. We need to get more of the working class, those folks that come in, because I don't know if you know, Erica, people are like, oh, this is the most diverse class ever in the history of Congress.
It's all white men. And they're all millionaires. Well, yeah, it's this old SNL skill. It's like, welcome to the new diverse Congress. There are like 4 people of color and a couple ladies.
Well, one side is really diverse. I'll be honest.
Rich old white guys. All right, so we have to wrap in just a second. I want to clarify one thing and then ask for some closing thoughts from our millionaires, and then I'll kick it to you to close. So Cindy asks, I'm disappointed to hear that the U.S. is planning a space station on the moon and will send multiple astronauts up there. This costs millions of dollars. Couldn't those dollars be better spent on Earth, on climate crisis, education, the pandemic, mental health, and poverty? I just want to make a clarification from us institutionally as the Patriotic Millionaires. We do not, I mean, we may have individual opinions about how this money is spent, but we are here to make the tax code fair, and in a democracy, the people should decide how to spend the money. So if y'all want to say that space stations are good, this is not good, all that, that should be for the people to decide as far as we're concerned. Of course, our members will have opinions about it, but we are here to unrig this economy. And so I just wanted to clarify that for folks. And a lot of people get in an argument about what we should spend money on, and the result is the rich don't pay their fair share. Well, the two conversations are not necessarily related. The rich need to pay their fair share, period. All right, so we'll do quick closing thoughts from our millionaires. John?
Just the whole point here is to give the lie to the notion that cutting taxes either drives the maximum amount of opportunity or protects America. If we don't pay people fairly, that just means my employees, if I didn't pay them fairly, they'd be on Medicaid and be getting a bunch of other benefits, and the rest of taxpayers would be paying for them. If we don't actually pay our fair taxes, we will not get the schools and the roads we need. And at the end of the day, it is also about building up that sense of moral commitment that we're all in this together. As that starts to erode, which Trump takes such joy in tearing apart America, I think the basic understructure of the American promise is at risk. And we're here to tell you that the current ideology is based on a bunch of lies.
Chuck or Morris, quick close, and then we'll turn it to the Congresswoman.
I just want to thank Representative Tlaib for doing what you're doing and continuing to press the case. Thank you, and keep going.
Thank you.
And with a great smile.
Yeah. So Congresswoman Tlaib, thank you for being with us. Any closing thoughts for and don't forget to visit taxtherich.com. So Congresswoman, go ahead.
I just want you all to know what you're doing and why it's important. So the president only pays $750 in taxes, right? I represent the 3rd poorest congressional district in the country. And in 2017, the average taxpayer in my district paid $2,943 in income taxes. I just put that in perspective. It is broken, and what you all are trying to do is fix it. And I appreciate that. And I just want you to know, thinking about that moment, these are working class folks. These are people that are doing everything they're supposed to do right, and they're not getting a fair shot. And what you're trying to say is we got to balance that out, and it has to be much more fair. Thank you all so much.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone, for being here. We really appreciate it. Thank you, Congresswoman. Have a great day, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.